Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Laura Prada from our Telesur studios in Caracas, Venezuela. We begin checking out our headlines. Votes continue taking place in Suriname following crucial general election with President Desi Bouterse seeking a third term in office. Nigeria continues hydroxychloroquine clinical trials for the treatment of COVID-19 patients despite the suspension of the drug by the World Health Organization. The Spanish government has announced a 10-day of national mourning in memory of COVID-19 victims. We begin with our news. You stay with us. Vote continues in Suriname following a crucial general election that sees President Desi Bouterse seeking a third term in office. Preliminary results show Bouterse's National Democratic Party losing its majority in the 51-member parliament that is responsible for electing the president. Voting ended at 9 p.m. in the South American country after it was extended by 2 hours due to delays. Just over 380,000 people were eligible to cast their ballots.
There were enough signs that the president government would commit fraud. Everything indicates that, therefore, we have taken extreme measures. We have foreign representatives from the OAS and CARICOM here, but we still opened our own institute in order to check better.
I have fulfilled my civic duty, and I say if you don't vote, then you vote anyway. This means that you did not want to help with an extra vote because your vote is subtracted. That is why I came to vote.
Brazilian police have raided the residence of Rio de Janeiro governor as part of a corruption investigation. Wilson Witzel, a political rival of President Jair Bolsonaro, has had his official residence searched by police as part of an investigation into misuse of funds to fight the coronavirus pandemic. The federal police carried out 12 search on seizure warrants in Sao Paulo and Rio de Janeiro to gather evidence about alleged embezzlement of funds for field hospitals. Though Witzel is a socially conservative politician like Bolsonaro, the two parted ways when the governor advocated for stricter quarantine measures while the president pushed for the reopening of the economy. Our correspondent Brian Muir in Sao Paulo has more details for us. Welcome, Brian.
Federal police raided the mansion of Rio de Janeiro Governor Wilson Witzel today as part of the placebo investigation, which is looking into fraud and embezzlement committed during the erection of Rio de Janeiro's field hospitals for the coronavirus outbreak. Although several field hospitals have been built, tents have been put up, beds, they don't have doctors in them yet, even though the hospital system in the state is on the verge of collapse. What people are wondering about is the timing of this, because in a video that was released of an April 22nd cabinet meeting recently by the Supreme Court, Bolsonaro is seen swearing and insulting Governor Witzel from Rio and Governor Doria from Sao Paulo for refusing to follow his suggestions to end all isolation and lockdown orders. Furthermore, his cabinet minister, Damaris Alves, is seen on this video, suggesting that Bolsonaro arrest governors who don't follow his advice on the coronavirus pandemic. The result is that everybody is questioning the timing here. Was Governor Witzel raided by the federal police because he refuses to end isolation orders in Rio de Janeiro, as Brazil is poised to become the world leader in coronavirus deaths and infections?
Thank you, Brian. That was Brian Muir from Sao Paulo. Also in Brazil, on Monday, they surpassed United States for the first time in number of daily deaths over a 24-hour period from COVID-19, registering 807 deaths during while the U.S. death toll stood at 620 over the 24-hour time frame. Brazil now has the second largest outbreak in the world with over 370,000 cases of the coronavirus and more than 23,000 deaths. The White House on Sunday announced that President Donald Trump was restricting the entry of non-U.S. citizens traveling from Brazil. Meanwhile, far-right President Brasilia Jair Bolsonaro has previously referred to the coronavirus as a little flu and attacked governors who imposed quarantine measures to protect the Brazilian people.
Está faltando de medicação, equipamento de proteção individual.
It's possible to happen, as it had already happened, and it happens in most of the health units. We have to leave the body there, in the same room where there are other patients waiting to save other lives arriving in a critical condition. We have double the patients and half of the team, and that happens in 90% of the health units, in hospitals and clinics of urgency and emergency. With that overload of work, the quality of the service is inefficient and causes physical and psychological problems to the healthcare workers.
Moving on to other topics, Haitian death squad leader Emmanuel Toto Constant has merely avoided deportation by U.S. officials this Tuesday by human rights activists who boycott his deportation, fearing it would lead to impunity. They say that he could be back in Haiti as early as next week. Our correspondent in Washington, Jorge Gestoso, has more details for us. Welcome, Jorge.
Thank you. Today, the U.S. is planning to send back to Haiti the death squad leader Emmanuel Toto Constant. Emmanuel Toto Constant was the founder of the FRAP, that was a death squad that was killing thousands of people, according to the reports, and was part of a military effort to oust President Jean-Bertrand Aristide. He was in the U.S. since 1994, and after that he has been, in 2008, sentenced to a prison because of some crimes, but never because of his assassinations in Haiti. On the other hand, yesterday, the intellectual Noam Chomsky was giving an interview on an American TV independent newscast, Democracy Now!, and he was using very, very harsh words against President Trump and his response to the pandemic. It was saying that it was a disastrous response, and that historically the U.S. has been blaming the yellow peril, meaning China, for things that went wrong, in this case also for the response of the coronavirus. And he was using even the words that, according to Noam Chomsky, we have a gangster in the White House, his words. We get back to you now.
Thank you, Jorge. And Paraguay's National Doctors Union took to the streets to demand the approval of a retirement law that is being held up by the president. Union leaders warned that they could go on a strike if President Mario Abdo Benitez continues to ignore the pleas. We have more on the following story.
After several years of fighting, in 2019, the medical union managed to push a retirement law through Congress. While the law is currently active, workers say that the president has not signed his approval and is holding up its implementation.
Our retirement law was approved by Congress, and they had 180 days to regulate it. That was last year, and it's still waiting to be officially regulated. Until that happens, it can't be properly applied.
Health workers mobilized in support of this law and have called attention to doctors who are over 60 years of age but continue to work despite being in the high-risk group for COVID-19.
This pandemic has made things worse because some of our doctors are in the high-risk age group. Some are over 65 and should be in their homes, retired. Some have even worked for more than 30 years and still can't go home.
Dr. Rosalva de Cac says that this new law replaces a previous one that said public workers needed to work for 40 years at minimum before being able to retire. The parameters will remain in place until the president gives final approval to the new law.
We are asking to replace Law 1626, which says public workers need to have worked for 40 years and be 65 years old before being allowed to retire with full benefits.
Doctors have asked to speak with the president, but the response they have received was that the president, Abdo Benitez, will meet with them after the pandemic ends. As such, the union has said that doctors could go on strike soon.
What can be a response to this offense? We need to strike. We have run out of options. We have asked to speak with the finance minister, with the president, but they keep putting us off. They say they have to wait until the pandemic is over. So I guess we'll wait until the pandemic is over too.
And to top this all off, there is a widespread shortage of medical supplies to treat the novel coronavirus.
From Paraguay, we move on to Bolivia, where Luis Arce, presidential candidate for Bolivia Movement Towards Socialism Party, has called on to the de facto government to allow aid from Cuba to fight the COVID-19 crisis in Beni department. Via Twitter, Arce said that the list of medicines requested by the Beni medical colleges include interferon alpha 2B, produced in the Caribbean nation, adding that the government of Bolivia cannot put political interests before health and must accept Cuban aid. Given the extent of the crisis in the department of Beni and Santa Cruz, Arce asked to humanize the plan to fight the coronavirus and proposed 9 immediate measures to deal with the situation. Like this, we go for a first break. Remember, follow us on Twitter at Telesur English and on my account at Laura P. Telesur. We'll be right back. We are back with our news. Hydroxychloroquine clinical trials for the treatment of COVID-19 patients will continue in Nigeria despite the suspension of the drug by the World Health Organization. The announcement was made by the Director General of the Nigerian National Agency for Food and Drug Administration, Professor Mojisola Adeyeye. Adeyeye alluded that she was not aware of the data the WHO used in coming up with the suspension of the drug and confirmed that the clinical trials have already started in the city of Lagos. On Monday, the WHO announced it suspended the use of hydroxychloroquine for the treatment of COVID-19 due to studies revealing that the drug could be causing a higher risk of death. And schools in Nigeria's low-income areas are trying to find ways to keep teaching during COVID-19 pandemic. Students in continuous schools can take to online learning, so teachers have decided to take classes to students' homes. So let's take a closer look at the story, how they do it.
It's a tuition-free school and operates in one of the urban slums in Lagos. All the pupils who attend Comenius Primary School come from disadvantaged backgrounds. The school has been shut down since March, when the Lagos state government ordered all schools closed because of COVID-19. But while many schools are taking to online learning, Comenius cannot because it simply doesn't have the funds, while parents cannot afford computers or mobile data, let alone the cost of electricity.
We don't want to leave the children idle at home doing nothing. We want them to be engaged because they are powerful. Their mind is powerful. They could attract beautiful things. So we don't want them to start attracting negative things in the community, in the society.
Knowing e-learning is not possible for the school and its pupils, Oweye Taiwo and her team decided to take the learning to the pupils at their homes and communities. At this community, the teachers are preparing some of the pupils for the day's lessons. It's a routine before any lesson commences, and the pupils must also wear their face mask and observe physical distancing. The teachers then administer weekly worksheets to the pupils and take them through lessons on various subjects. It's essentially what happens in the classroom, but in this case, there's no writing board.
So we come every Monday, we work. We print out this worksheet. We ensure that we have adequate, numbers of these worksheets to pass around to the huge number of children that we're serving. So teachers, from Tuesday, teachers start going to the homes of these children to pass across this worksheet, and also they get those ones they gave out the previous weeks and for marking. So when they mark, they find a way of getting these things back as well to the children. So this is how we've been juggling. This is how we've been ensuring that these children are learning.
Marking of the worksheets takes place in the school, again with physical distancing observed. The whole process is time-consuming, but the alternative would mean no learning at all for the students.
We want the best for every child because they also count in the growth of our dear nation. But we are hoping that we'll be able to get sponsors, we'll be able to get, funders so that we can buy the necessary digital devices so that these children, can connect to the internet, can connect to e-learning, because there's so much as well to learn online.
Until they get that funding that could make virtual learning possible, Oweya Taiwo and her team say they will continue with their strategy of community schooling until schools can reopen.
Alternative to learning. Moving on to Mozambique, they have reported the first coronavirus death in the country. The National Director of Public Health, Rosa Marlene, said the patient had suffered from various pre-existing conditions and had been hospitalized repeatedly. She added that since the start of the crisis, more than 80,000 suspected patients have been tested in Mozambique. As of Monday, the nation reported 200 confirmed cases. And Guyana's Election Commission, GCOM, will likely extend its 25-day recount deadline of the country's March 2nd general elections. This as the Commission is only halfway through the process, which is scheduled to end on Saturday. The highly continuous Region 4 is the slowest counting station according to local observers. As of Monday night, over 80 boxes were counted, bringing the total to 1,206, with 2,339 boxes remaining.
37 oath of identity used.
In Venezuela, Vice President Delcy Rodriguez has condemned the Bank of England in support of opposition lawmaker Juan Guaidó, and who is trying to hold 31 tons of Venezuelan gold. And South America's biggest carrier, Latin Airlines, has filed for bankruptcy as it grapples with a sharp downturn and air travel sparked by the coronavirus pandemic. According to the airline officials, passengers and cargo flights will continue to operate during the reorganization, and employees will still be paid. The International Air Transport Association last month predicted that airlines' revenue from hauling passengers would drop $314 billion this year. LATAM move comes little more than 2 weeks after another major Latin American airline, Avianca, filed for bankruptcy protection in New York. Medical workers in Mexico City have protested the lack of personal protective equipment amid COVID-19 pandemic. Healthcare professionals from various institutes have gathered outside the National Institute of Respiratory Diseases of Mexico, calling for a dialogue with the government about the situation. Protesters said they often have to buy the PEEP themselves and were told on multiple occasions to sterilize their N95 masks. Like this, we go for another break. You stay tuned with us. We are right back with our news. The novel coronavirus cases in Spain continue to drop. A new content system implemented by the health ministry shows a marked disease and death and total COVID-19 cases. Meanwhile, Spanish health authorities have stressed that the new numbers correspond to individualized validation process in all 17 autonomous communities. The Spanish government has announced 10 days of national mourning in memory of the COVID-19 victims. Spanish flags in Madrid, Cibeles Square, were hanging at half-staff in a sign of respect, and a new monument in memory of the victims have also been unveiled recently.
The Council of Ministers this morning approved the official nationwide declaration of mourning for the victims of the coronavirus pandemic, a mourning that will be extended for 10 days starting tomorrow, Wednesday, with flags at half-mast in all public buildings and also on the Navy ships. As of yesterday, Monday, 26,834 people have lost their lives in this tragedy.
Italy is planning to deploy over 60,000 volunteers on the streets to monitor social distance measures. The initiative was launched by Italian Regional Affairs Minister Francesco Boccia. On Sunday, he added that the work will be open to all citizens, but those who've been employed and are on welfare would be considered first. Meanwhile, several government authorities, among them the Minister of Interior, have discarded the initiative, arguing no previous consultations were held. Afghan authorities have begun releasing Taliban prisoners in response to group's 3-day ceasefire offer. Afghan authorities plan to release 900 more Taliban prisoners on Tuesday as part of a pledge to free up to 2,000 fighters. The pause in fighting, which came into effect on Sunday to mark the Muslim holiday of Eid al-Fitr, was for the most part holding across the country. Authorities hope the Taliban will extend the ceasefire so that delayed peace talks could commence. India has reported more than 6,500 new COVID-19 cases, the country's biggest one-day increase. Total cases amount to over 147,000 and more than 4,000 deaths, according to the latest statistics from the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. The virus has spread through some of the poorest and most densely populated areas of the country, concentrated in the western states of Maharashtra, which includes the financial hub of Mumbai, India's largest city. Like this, we come to the end of News Brief. Of course, you can find this and more on our website, thunderstormenglish.net, where you can read opinion articles, watch special interviews, and follow up the latest information. For example, the arrival of the Iranian tankers to Venezuela, and of course, about the latest numbers related to COVID-19. The invitation is made. You continue with us with Telesur, always together, connecting our global thousands. Until next time, thank you for watching.